Chapter 2 in Wuthering Heights serves very important thing concerning Mr. Lockwood's observation about the appearance of new characters. These two characters are Miss Cathy and Hareton, Hindley's son. So in chapter 2 we have some important extracts that show the physical attributes and the personality of those characters. And also besides that, we have some sort of interaction between Heathcliff and Cathy, which is also an indication of the type of relationship between the two through the way they are talking to each other. Let's start with the first extract, which is about Hareton. Hareton is being described in this particular way. The snow began to drive thickly. I seized the handle to essay another trial, when a young man without coat and shouldering a pitchfork appeared in the yard behind. This extract provides something about Hareton, and through the physical description presented by Mr. Lockwood about the young man, we can evaluate the type of the character he is. Gentle people, in fact, should wear clothes suitable to the weather. But Hareton here came out without being cautious of the stormy and the freezy weather. This lifestyle shows that he is not a high social status person. He is someone would be a servant or a worker in Wuthering Heights, no more, no less. Then the next character is his encounter with little Cathy. I was pleased to observe the Missus, an individual whose existence I had never previously suspected. I bowed and waited, thinking she would bid me take a seat. She looked at me, leaning back in her chair, and remained motionless and mute. Rough weather, I remarked. I'm afraid, Mrs. Heathcliff, the door must bear the consequence of your servants' leisure attendance. I had hard work to make them hear me. She never opened her mouth. I stirred, she stirred also. At any rate, she kept her eyes on me in a cool, regardless manner, exceedingly embarrassing and disagreeable. The major opinion we form about the personality of this young woman through her interaction with Mr. Lockwood is that she is almost rude. Her rudeness is communicated through her silence, particularly when she never responds to Mr. Lockwood's initiation of the talk, and she never welcomes him. She kept an eye on him, and impolite behavior from a girl against a man who is for the first time encounters. He describes her looks as disagreeable and embarrassing. These two adjectives are evaluative modifiers that can evaluate Miss Cathy's personality and her presence in this house. The third extract also focuses on Miss Cathy, but now Mr. Lockwood provides physical details about her physique. Her position before was sheltered from the light. Now I had a distinct view of her whole figure and countenance. She was slender, apparently scarcely past girlhood. An admirable form, the most exquisite little face that I had ever had the pleasure of beholding. Small features, very fair, flaxen ringlets, or rather golden, hanging loose on her delicate neck, and eyes, had they been agreeable in expression, that would have been irresistible. The language and the style of narration of Mr. Lockwood is rendered in terms of how he describes this woman, and we can make some sort of impression about Mr. Lockwood's personality concerning his description of women. Now, when he describes Cathy, his description is rendered in sensual terms because he focused on her physical attributes, such as having a slender face and exquisite figure. His description is useful for readers, in fact, to have physical image in the reader's mind of this young lady. And in the final part of this extract, the young lady looks as being irresistible, and this is a clear indication of Lockwood's sensual inclination for women in general. The narration style here is what, and in fact, the other types of narration in the other extracts function as what, as a camera. This is a recording of whatever he sees, everything he encounters, with a sort of personal impression. The next extract shifts the focus to Mr. Harrington once again, an extra remark about Harrington's personality. I began to doubt whether he were a servant or not. His dress and speech were both rude, entirely devoid of the superiority observable in Mr. and Mrs. Heathcliff. His thick brown curls were rough and uncultivated. His whiskers encroached bearishly over his cheeks. His hands were embrowned like those of a common labourer. Still his bearing was free, almost haughty, and he showed none of a domestic assiduity in attending on the lady of the house. This extract is precisely describing Harrington, not Heathcliff, and Lockwood's impression about this character is always negative since the moment he met him before he came into Wuthering Heights. Why? Because through the physical attributes he recites, all of these modifiers are all negative in connotation, such as the use of rude and devoid of superiority. Now, Mr. Lockwood in this extract, his language is uncertain and factual observer. Why? Because he was hesitant for once again when he said almost haughty and showed none of domestic assiduity attending on the lady of the house, and he believes that whatever he observes is correct, but this is incorrect. Now, if you want to evaluate Harrington's personality, we are trying to focus on Mr. Lockwood's observation. And from the beginning of this extract, Mr. Lockwood has bad impression about the rude behavior practiced by this young man, for he came over Lockwood and the young lady without permission and without delicacy. A matter that upsets Lockwood and made him believe that he is a servant or a worker under the influence of the overall shape and the clothing of this young man. Finally, we are introduced to some sort of an interaction between little Cathy, and Heathcliff, and through the type of the dialogue between the two, we are going to understand some sort of relationship between the two. Let's read the following extract. How so? I cannot escort you. They wouldn't let me go to the end of the garden wall. I'll go with him as far as the park, he said. You will go with him to hell, exclaimed his master, or whatever relation he bore. And who is to look after the horses, eh? A man's life is of more consequence than one evening's neglect of the horses. Somebody must go, murmured Mrs. Heathcliff, more kindly than I expected. Not at your command, retorted Harrington. If you set store on him, you would better be quiet. Now, the bondage between the family members in this particular stage shows to us that it is some sort of a catalyst for the conflict between the two characters, Harrington, Cathy, and Heathcliff. And the tense dialogue between the young lady and Heathcliff over whether to accompany Lockwood or not discloses the type of the relationship between the family members. The young lady declares that she is not allowed to move out of the gate. Even the young man exposes that no one is able to behave on his own accord. Harrington is not free to choose whatever he is trying to step in forward. The reply made by Heathcliff, you will go with him to hell, is a sign of a dictator that judges people by force and intimidation.